So good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm your host, Carol, and we have Fazana, we have Soraya, we have Selvi, and we have an awesome guest tonight. This is the second of the series of our wellness series, Wisdom Wellness series. And Shobana Cook, as all of you know, has done so much work on homeopathy. And
we
so
can't
today,
see you, Carol. Excuse me. We need to see you. Oh, yes, perfect.
Oh my goodness. Today's been a crazy day, guys. So I'm going to start again, if you don't mind. With us today, we have Shobana Cook. And she's an awesome, awesome lady. I'm going to tell you more about her later. Today's the second of our wellness series, and it's on homeopathy and healing. Before we get to that, I would actually invite Soraya to tell us a little bit of what you think wellness and healing is all about. Over to you, Soraya.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Carol, and thank you everybody for watching and being with us all through last year and this year. This is our second series, season 2. We're talking about wellness. I think a healthy nation should have healthy people. So we thought, let's talk about health and explore some powerful alternative ways of how we can stay healthy. So Carol, answering your question directly, you know, Gandhi, I really support his work and his work particularly on nonviolence. And he said something so profound, and I'm so glad to share. Shobana is listening. Homeopathy cures a greater percentage of cases than any other method of treatment, he says. Homeopathy is the latest and the most refined method of treating patients economically and non-violently. I mean, economically, I'm sure it's economic. Non-violently, I have to think that is also true, because recently I had some health crisis and I looked at my medical bills. Fortunately, I have insurance. It was running into thousands of dollars, you know. And then I'm sure I didn't explore sufficiently alternative homeopathic treatments. So I am really looking forward to this program, and I am not just wanting to listen to show, we want begin a love affair, kind of begin a new journey with homeopathy. And Carol, you said you have explored in homeopathy. So I wonder what Sylvie has to say about homeopathy and her experience with homeopathy. We can't hear
Sylvie,
you.
you're muted.
Thank you, Soraya. And welcome, Shobana. I'm glad that you're here with us today. Homeopathy is actually considered to be a very successful method of alternative healing. And we are aware that it is the favorite of the royal family in London, and also very much popular in India as well. I mean, Soraya, I just read out the quote from Gandhi. But my personal story is that I had a terrible locked back some time ago in London. And I had gone to several doctors and they were all giving me painkillers. And finally, it was homeopathy that healed me. And I was actually laid out. I couldn't even move. I was actually bedridden for a short time. And the lady came home and she spoke to me in length and she gave me some tablets, some pills or whatever, and then I was better. So my personal journey is that I have been very, very lucky with homeopathy. However, I'm aware that homeopathy is only 200 years old, as opposed to Ayurveda and Siddha medicine, which are about 5,000 years old. All three approaches, however, they approach the human body in the same way, holistically, and treats every patient individually. It would be interesting to find out in what way homeopathy differs from Ayurveda and Siddha, because even in the use of substances for healing, all three use natural substances as opposed to chemicals. So in what way does homeopathy differ? I also would like to know if you would like to enlighten us on this controversial aspect of homeopathy medicines being called as part of Big Pharma.
Well, thank you, Sylvie. Let's see what Fazana has to say about this. Fazi, what do you have in mind?
Yeah, I've been, taking homeopathy treatment for various things, even for myself and my kids, since they were born, literally, for the last 16 plus years, thanks to my mom introducing me to homeopathy medicine. My personal experience is I had a thyroid problem, and I was put on thyroxine for the rest of my life. And I did homeopathy for about 9 months. It was slow treatment, but it worked, and now it's perfectly normal. Whenever I do my thyroid tests, everything's normal. My son had constipation, my daughter had phlegm. So all these chronic illnesses where, you have to keep taking medicines, keep taking recurring medicines is what I have experienced. And a close friend of mine, he was diabetic, he had high HbA1c, it was like 7.5 or something like that. And then he did homeopathy treatment, and we can't believe it. It's absolutely normal. If not, he would have been on metformin and other Western drugs. So, I swear by homeopathy all along. So I'm really glad to have you on the show, Shobhi. Yeah.
And also, I want to add, Carol, from a Western perspective, what Mark Twain said about homeopathy. He said, you may honestly feel grateful that homeopathy survived the attempts of the allopaths to destroy it. So, coming from the West and, currently living here for the time, and I think in certain countries it's banned. And I'm just wondering, I'm sure Shobhana might address this too. So there is a divergent view on this topic, and it's not a go-to for everybody. And I'd like to hear how we can really communicate this powerful message of alternative healings. What do you think, Carol?
So, yeah. So, Shobhana knows I sent Shobhana SOSs. Shobhi, I want something and I want a quick fix, right? And so she's like, Auntie Carol, I need to talk to you first, but, I'm always open-minded to alternative therapies. That's before you start swallowing all kinds of Western tablets that have side effects. And, sometimes you might have to mix the two, but before you do that, I'm always open to trying the holistic approach to things. And last week we spoke about Qigong, and that was interesting, right? So this week, let me, without too much time, introduce you to Shobhi. I've known Shobhi since she was a little kid, right? And always very perky, very excited. Whenever she saw me, she'd be, always very sweet, always acknowledge you and say hi. And she's still very much the same kind of person, but I think calmer. We can take a bit from that, Soraya. So just to tell you a little bit about Shobhi, she graduated in anthropology. However, she has embarked on an endless journey of studying. She studied homeopathy, she did yoga, she did tarot. And, Shobhana first, I think, completed her diploma in yoga in 1998 under the tutelage of Dr. K.V.K. Shivaswamy of the International Zen Institute of Yoga. So, Shobhi's been all over. And I think for her, homeopathy has been very much a personal journey. And correct me if I'm wrong, Shobhi. Shobhi also co-founded the Ayush Holistic Healing Platform, which supported the education and operation of an integrated clinical practice. Right. She also has 1948, where she designs and, makes various adornments. So she's very much one of these rounded females who doesn't think that just learning one thing is sufficient. She does everything very well. That's the other thing I can say about Shobana. So Shobi, over to you. And they are going to also, you can tell us a little bit about how your homeopathy started, and more importantly, your journey into homeopathy and why you went there. And then after which I let the panel ask you the difficult questions. Over to you, Shobi.
Thank you very much. That was quite the introduction. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm very excited to be here because I know you all in so many different contexts. So it's fantastic. Where do I begin? A little bit about homeopathy for those people who may not be familiar with it. The founder is Dr. Samuel Hahnemann from Germany. It was founded in 1796. He was a physician, an allopathic doctor, and I would say possibly disillusioned with the allopathic healing system, and he was questioning and experimenting, and he decided to experiment with quinoa bark. Allopathically, it's known as the quinine, and he was taking small doses on a regular basis for his medical experiment, basically. And then he found that it started to cause the symptoms in a healthy person that it was supposed to cure. And from there on was the birth of homeopathy and the homeopathic principles, where like cures like, and the minimum dose. So that's a little bit of history in a nutshell. From there, he wrote the Organon, which is basically our Bible as a homeopath. And as Auntie Carol says, sometimes she'll call me the SOS, but even the SOS call we can deal with fast. But I just need to know like what happened 2 days before. I need to know what happened 1 week before, where she was emotionally, because as a homeopath, we're not treating the disease, we're treating the person. So for us, diagnosis in that allopathic sense is not necessary. But we do have to have these sometimes really personal questions from, what you're feeling about your partner, your spouse, what your food cravings are, your nightmares, your sleep patterns. So generally how it works, at least for me and my practice and the way I was trained, is that we have a sort of a 6 to 8 weekly touch base. And more than a patient healer homeopath relationship, it's more like a partnership, and it's a chat, and it's to see where you're at and keep tweaking and keep adjusting so that you use the remedies when you need and you understand the principles of how this works. So over time, what happens more or less in those 6 to 8 weeks is that people come back and say to you, I did it this way, and I found, like we talked about, I don't know, let's say pulsatilla, and I was using it twice a day, but then when things got bad, I went up to 4 times. But those slight adjustments can only happen on that ongoing dialogue. So yes, it is a little time consuming, but I also would like everyone to understand that homeopathy, or like Ayurveda, like all of these complementary therapies, I don't know if I want to call them alternative, because why is it alternative? It's a complementary. I feel like the future is about an integrated model. So the complementary therapies always look at what else is going on around you, what are the life-changing events. Sometimes maybe, like Auntie Carol said, her dog was sick today. It was a crazy flustered day, and that does have an impact. There is a ripple, and maybe chronic ailments will get ruffled a little bit. So in that same way, we have to be able to move up and down with our homeopathic remedies. How did I stumble into this? Because I was not quite looking to be a homeopath when I went out to college and thought I was going to do God knows what. I was always interested in the life sciences, and yoga had been a big part of my life from early on, from maybe about 16, 17. Later, when I got pregnant with my first son, Luke, I decided to go to a hospital that also offered alternative, a selection of different complementary medicines. And they coached you and they taught you, different modalities for different things. And I remember one time being pregnant and having, terrible labor pains. And they gave me this small remedy, this small ball that just completely changed everything. And my pain that was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was like a 20, suddenly just went away. And I was fascinated. I had never experienced anything like that. So I looked into it more, and I had decided then that I was going to use homeopathy to treat my son, because I'd never experienced that kind of relief. And I was curious. So I was fortunate enough to have access to meet in that pediatric hospital, homeopaths, acupuncturists, Ayurvedic practitioners, and they all helped you decide what you wanted to lead with. But again, it was much later. I'd experimented with homeopathy. I took my son to a homeopath, but I was a parent, I wasn't qualified. But later, when I had my second son who had severe food allergies, it required for me, from being the passive parent who would make the appointment and go to see the homeopath, to suddenly, pull out all stops, because by the time I would call and make an appointment and go, this kid had gone from like a 0 to 100. And, I would need to be in the emergency room. I've had to use an EpiPen. The anaphylaxis was real. He had asthma. He would turn blue. It was really a struggle. And I was bouncing between the emergency room, because it was never a well visit. It was always acute, and it was life-threatening. And I'm so grateful to Elaine Lewis, who I met in Philadelphia. She's a phenomenal homeopath, and she's an editor on hpathy.com. And I had the good fortune of meeting her and her teaching me, along with the Robin Murphy courses, to be able to treat my son. And she said, don't worry, you do the course, you become the homeopath, we're here to help you, and we'll make your son, part of your clinical practice. And so it began, and my goodness, it was transformational for me completely, to have that much control in terms of understanding when to jump in, when it was acute. Having the responsibility was sometimes tough, but she was incredible. And with her, I learned everything, So when Farzana mentions that sometimes it takes a long time, I agree. With chronic things it does, but also in acutes, in life-threatening instances, for me, homeopathy, on the way to the emergency room, I have had to turn back because I've not needed to go to the emergency room. My homeopathy has kicked in and it has worked. So I have to say, it can be very fast. In the 1900s in the US, the emergency rooms were run by homeopaths. It was homeopathic medicine, but the money is always the issue, and money always changes the picture. And today it's an allopathic room, and it's homeopaths are nowhere there. But it's an interesting, that's sort of how I got thrown into homeopathy. I got thrown into it out of need, complete need. I didn't have any other, the allopaths didn't have answers. It was just otherwise constantly going back and forth into the emergency room, and recovering from the medicines they'd given in the emergency room took another month. And, you couldn't do that. And today, this kid who had severe allergies to eggs and tomatoes and nuts and sesame, so many things, has outgrown most of them. And I have to say, homeopathy really healed him from inside out. I haven't even touched on the fact that he had eczema and, so many other things. Does anyone else want to ask me any questions about the acute treatments?
Could you define acute treatments, Shobhana?
So in the case of my son, it was about anaphylaxis. So I have to say, and I know this is a big one, I'm not suggesting that people just drop their Western medicine prescriptions, because it's not like that. You have to be guided. You have to have a good homeopath alongside you, helping you along. So when he would have the swelling, due to being exposed to nuts or shellfish, and where I would normally use an EpiPen because Allegra wouldn't work, and his allergies were so bad that the doctors had told me we would need to use 2 EpiPens to make sure he'd make it to the emergency room. I could give Apis, homeopathic Apis, probably 2-3 times on the way to the emergency room, because I didn't quite believe it could work in place of this EpiPen. The EpiPen was, I think in the US, if you have insurance, it's covered. But if you're buying it over the counter, it's like about $150, right? And you use it just one time, and it expires every 6 months. And I remember I had to have these in stock because, God forbid, I didn't have an EpiPen and something happened, versus my Apis that I bought from my Whole Foods, which is, I don't know, Sarai, help me out. How much is a homeopathic globules in the US? Like maybe $5, maybe $6 a whole tube. And when you look at when you talked about medicine and the economics, it's so cheap. It's such an incredibly viable economic option to treat masses. But there isn't enough money in it to for everyone to get a big piece of the pie. So I guess it gets thrown aside. So when I talk about the emergencies, I'm talking about anaphylaxis. And when I had the confidence that my homeopathic remedies would help in a situation like that, I can change something, right? Sorry, somebody's trying to call me. They should know I'm on this Zoom. Sorry. I still don't know how to.
We are all learning Zoom, so Shobhi, that's okay.
Yeah,
Take
just
your
give me
time.
1 second. I'm gonna just mute myself and just send a message.
So while Shobhi is doing that, I want to tell you something. I was on my way to a tournament in New Zealand last year when COVID infections in Singapore was really at its highest levels. And so I called Shobana and I said, Shobhi, I'm on my way to New Zealand, and I have to stop in transit in Singapore. Can you help me? And so Shobhi was so kind enough to send me the little vials full of, the little what you call them, tablets, whatever.
The globules.
Yeah, and I traveled all the way to New Zealand and Australia and came back quite confident nothing was going to happen to me. Going through this airport where, it was like deserted and the few people were there was totally masked 2-3 times. So yeah, back to you, Shobhi. I was just trying to kill some time with a story. So
sorry,
yeah. You're back.
No, but that happens all the time, having to travel with homeopathic remedies. They're like, what are these balls? And they're all white. So I would say to any parent, at least in your first aid kit, bumps, bruises, start with even the little things. I started at the other end of the spectrum with like some really serious life-threatening things, and I moved across. But it gives you health autonomy. And I think, as we all know today, and what we can see as this pandemic plays out, is the politics of all of this. Even our health is political. And the choices we make are also political. So I think having health autonomy is a very, very important thing. And that is a fundamental right that we need to protect for ourselves. Everyone should have the choice.
But Shobana, here's a question. So I woke up this morning and I feel not too well, okay? My chest is hurting and I know there's something internally that's quite not right for me. So I have to rush to the hospital to see a doctor. But what you're saying is, you're not saying don't go to the doctor, but you're saying instead of getting stuck in the emergency, explore an alternative form of globules, you said. How do I, in that interim with the pain, what do I do? I mean, I'm asking this on my behalf and also all
No,
the listeners. This is why we go to the Western. It's a quick fix. What do I
it's a
do
quick
in that?
fix.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say go to your doctor, but
Okay.
while you do that, find an alternative medical practitioner, be it an acupuncturist, a naturopath, a herbalist, a homeopath, anyone, it doesn't really matter. But another modality that looks at you as a person, not as a disease or just as a body part. Because when we look at allopathy, very often you have the liver specialist, you have the cardiologist, you have the psychiatrist, but none of them sit together and look at you as the whole person. And for example, someone's having a breathing issue, somebody's having, let's say, asthma. And yes, it is acute, and yes, they need to be nebulized, and it's an immediate thing. But the tendency to get recurring asthma attacks has an emotional root. And that cannot be addressed with chemicals. That has to be addressed with an energy-based medicine,
Fabulous.
And I think I really am a champion of an integrated practice. I think we should share more. I think that, we shouldn't be scared of the allopaths, and the allopaths shouldn't be intimidated by homeopaths or Ayurvedic practitioners. We should all have a place on the health platform.
Absolutely. I think that it should be integrated so that the people get the best of all the medical practices.
Right. And me being a homeopath, I am able to, for my patients, and also for my family. And I have to say, sometimes it's harder to do when you're an outsider, because we're not in the health system, we're not in the hospital. But let's say somebody has to have a surgery and you need a surgeon for that. But after that, you can do the recovery and the pain relief and all of that homeopathically, or with acupuncture, or with essential oils. There are so many options. You don't have to have only allopathic treatment the whole illness through.
Right.
There are interventions,
Yeah. For me, okay, what you're saying is like music to my ears, and I'm wondering if we can ask the listeners, how many of you go to the allopathic treatment, Western, and then stick there without exploring the alternative?
I say explore all. I say have a GP that you can talk to honestly, who's, and it's important. And I think GPs are so much more valuable to communities than only going to specialists, because GPs know that old-fashioned GP practices are dying out. I think the US has very little of that. The UK had a great GP system. Even here in Sri Lanka, we do. I'm not sure how it is in other places, but someone you go to from your, headache to your irritable bowel to whatever. So they kind of have your medical history. Whereas today we go directly, we circumvent GPs and people go directly to specialists. But the specialist doesn't know the history of the other ailments. I suggest everyone has a good GP, and they also have in their little Rolodex complementary therapists. It doesn't matter, homeopath, acupuncturist, Ayurveda, somebody who looks at them holistically. And
so
then
here's
together,
the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have so many questions. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Now, in India, there are 217,000 homeopathic doctors.
Yeah, India's really been phenomenal for homeopathy.
They call it the land of homeopathy too. So what are the resources that are available to Sri Lankans? I mean, are there sufficient homeopaths, or do they have to come to Colombo? Or
it's very
that was my
sad.
question too, Shobhana. I want to add to that question so that you can answer it all at once. I mean, is it recognized by the Ministry of Health, and how do we nurture the homeopathic community in Sri Lanka compared to India? Yeah, just to add to.
So compared to India, we have a long way to go, because India has the Ayush Ministry that is really empowered to go out there and do the work on the complementary therapies, and has given dignity to the practitioners and to the art to the medical modality. Here we have a battle between indigenous medicine and the health ministry. So homeopathy was in health ministry, it's now gone to indigenous, but indigenous, the Ayurvedic community, I guess, it's not indigenous to Sri Lanka. So we are kind of a little bit homeless, but we are there in indigenous medicine, but we're not well supported because it's just not on anyone's agenda. There is a government homeopathic hospital in Valisara, but as far as I am aware, we don't have a registration process. They've been in and out of court. We don't have, the council has been set up now, but it's very controversial. So unfortunately, we've been caught up in politics, and that has had a negative impact on the homeopathic community.
Selvi, did you have a question for Shobhana?
Yes, actually, I've got two questions. I think Shobhana is a unique practitioner, particularly in homeopathy, because she has another aspect to her which is quite new and quite, shall we say, novel, which is about horoscopes of astrology. So do you think astrological charts, the way they are cast, can lead to wellness and well-being? Say, for once equipped with a horoscope, can we take preventive measures in order to avoid disease? And would you say that astrological charts can be used to complement homeopathy?
This is a very big and loaded question because you're on the realm of, also belief and faith and spirituality. But for me, I see astrology, Vedic astrology, and the chart as a tool, and not in a fortune telling kind of sense, but it's a scan. I think it's an incredibly accurate scan. When we see on the prescriptions pad, when it says RX, it historically meant, the horoscope was seen, the planetary positions were taken into account. Today, still, the Ayurvedic practitioners look at the Vedic chart. And even in yoga or even in Varma, Siddha, it's recognized. I personally feel that it has a huge, we can do a lot with the chart in preventative medicine in order to prepare people based on the dasas they're going to face and how to navigate it. And the cures available to you under certain planetary influences are also clearly given to you through the Shastras. So for me, I would say your horoscope, Vedic casting of your horoscope is on par with any medical diagnostic test you're going to go take in whichever hospital, because I can get a lot of information from this chart that I don't see it as a threat, I see it as a complementary. And I can look at it just body-wise, you can look at it in terms of mind, emotions, soul, so you can really look at the whole person. The physical, the mental, the spiritual, and well-being and wellness is about that, that harmony. The spirit within this body has to be happy. And if there is a disconnect there, we are going to get that disease. So often I find having that conversation and that cup of tea and understanding the history of where are you at today, they're all really helpful. And in today's busy world of e-channeling, well, we've all slowed down because of COVID, but the whole e-channeling or whatever you call it, and you go in and there's 100 people and you get 5 minutes with the doctor, I'm not sure how helpful it is to the individual.
So
because
I want to
always
ask
shooting
something.
fire.
Yeah, I want to ask, give Soraya a chance to play devil's advocate. Soraya, you were itching to ask her another question. Please go ahead.
I know so many questions, because, in our program, our goal is to encourage women to be healthy so that they can be nourishers in their homes, then they can be change agents in their communities and their country. So health is really, really critical for, they say a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. So, so I think as with anything else, there is a whole change that has to take place. You can't just say, oh, I'm doing homeopathic for my chest, heart condition. There has to be lifestyle changes. So how do you wake up, Shobana, every morning? How do I wake up and then incorporate homeopathy into my lifestyle so that I can be a better functioning citizen? How do I make it an everyday thing, not just when I'm sick?
Exactly. And I think that's the success. It's when it's an everyday, it's got to be part of your life. You have to think with a holistic lens. So, I would say one is about knowledge and education. And it's not enough for someone to go visit their homeopath and take homeopathic medicine. They actually are partners in this. This is their journey. So they need to make the effort and put the time in to understand the nuances of this modality, be it Ayurveda, yoga, homeopathy. You have to learn it. It's, in order for it to become a lifestyle, you have to become a student. I'm not saying that people have to be really well versed with it, but they have to understand the fundamentals. That way, they will also get to see themselves. It's about looking in that mirror to those difficult, dark places. Because sometimes we're not able to do that with a stranger. You have to, when you're looking at holistic medicine, sometimes you have to really look at yourself and see the shadow side. And the shadow work is also important. Why am I getting, I don't know, let's say, why am I getting these blood boils? And who's altering your blood in a way? Like what's getting, who do you have bad blood with? Those kinds of conversations you need to know. And that's why it's important to keep reading, to be aware of how all of that has an impact on health. And I think to some extent, allopathy, it's incredibly powerful. It's life-saving. It has so many benefits, but it has also made people expect to just shoot out fires and not really look at maintenance.
So Shobi, sorry to butt in, but do you say that, some of these illnesses also can be caused by negative emotions? A lot of people carry a lot of baggage, right? So does homeopathy also help in that aspect, or it's part of the discussion you have before you start treating?
No, I think it's part of our discussion, but homeopathy can slowly peel away the layers. Imagine like an onion, that each disease is a layer. And as we identify the emotions and we take away the layers, you let go of a lot of diseases and you come back to your natural state of peace and love and happiness, which is all there. We are all that. It's just that different experiences have put layers upon layers on us. And in order, we have to be willing to be vulnerable sometimes to drop the disease. Sometimes people have a really hard time letting go of a disease. Like they always say, oh no, I can't because, I have this migraine. So that means I have to do things like this. And their identity is very strongly linked to my migraine or to my back pain. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, what does it let me off the hook from? What do I gain from holding on to this disease? And you'd be surprised.
You take ownership of the migraine. It's my migraine, right?
Yeah.
Actually, Shobi, you're so right. Yeah, I mean, all my experiences with the homeopathic consultant has taken almost an hour, whereas when you rightly compared with the allopathy, you just go in and the next person is online and you just take your medicines, and it's complementary. So sometimes you have to, for diagnostics, you have to take the Western medical tests, and then the tests give you certain clues and you sort them, you peel the onion one by one, and then, you sort them out. So, yeah, I mean, and also I've used a lot of complementary medication and other healing methods like pranic healing, Reiki, even Ayurveda, and I think more for prevention. All these complementary forms are good for prevention, and then hopefully you won't have to go for any Western serious, surgery. So I think that's the route for us. You have to use these methods to prevent after you get into a serious
Preventive
condition.
medicine
Sometimes,
is
yes,
very important. Yes, yes.
yes.
So I think that, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was so excited from what you're saying. Before the pandemic, even to buy a red chili or an onion, I go to the supermarket. During the pandemic, I started growing my own garden. So we have mint, we have green chilies, we have tomatoes, we have brinjal. So this is the thing that you're saying, be aware and take ownership. There's so much more. And I just want the listeners to know this, that what you said is so profound. And a part of me is dying within, because why aren't we incorporating this into the curriculum of our children and teaching these things? Yeah.
Of course. And I think that's where the change has to be. If it's not in the curriculum, then I think as parents, as adults in these communities, we have to teach the children. We have to teach the next generation how to heal little things. Your kitchen is a pharmacy, from the turmeric to the ginger to the honey to oil, so many things that you can use in your maintenance is from your kitchen. And all of that comes together. So in that, I'm going a little bit out of the homeopathic scope, but I see that it's all one, and you can't separate the two. Like, you can't do homeopathy, like you rightly said, only for my heart issue, and the rest of my medicine is something completely not complementary to that.
So Shobhi, tell us a little bit about your yoga, because I think all this, as you said, is all interconnected, right? Spirituality, all of this. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yes, so for me, the yoga practice has been the base, because that's the one I started with at a very early age. And I'm able to adjust my physical body, and then to be able to think clearly, to be able to see clearly, to find the right answers. And I feel like the breath work in yoga practice, or even Tai Chi or Qigong, I think when you all talked about Qigong last week, you're able to clear those energy channels and get that vitality to flow, and everything then just works better. It doesn't take away the problems are there, but you're able to respond as opposed to react. It gives you that space, it gives you that position of witness, which I think very often we fall in the middle, and we become part of the problem almost. And it just gives you that little time out to just center yourself. So yoga is really important. People's personal spiritual practice, whatever their faith is also very important. And I think today, more than ever, we're seeing that in these lockdowns and in these pandemics, those are the practices that are holding the mental health of people together. And it's community.
Shobhi, in this one, sorry, I was going to ask you about, we talked about yoga, meditation, and spirituality, but usually these alternative medicines systems, they also talk a lot about lifestyle changes. Now, what kind of lifestyle changes would you recommend with homeopathy?
So with homeopathy, I would recommend that sort of yogic diet lifestyle. Not, in homeopathy, they don't, it doesn't stipulate that you have to, whereas in Ayurveda, it's pretty strict. In even yoga as medicine, it's quite strict. Homeopathy gives you that freedom. So a lot of people find that you don't have to change a lot, but I must say the no coffee or the awareness of the coffee intake. It has to be there because it can antidote. Homeopathic medicines are very, very sensitive, so they can be antidoted very easily. Even the toothpaste. So when you're working with your homeopathic practitioner, those are some of the things they'll say. And for coffee lovers, that's the challenge when they say, stop your coffee. I'm not saying stop the coffee, but when you take the homeopathic medicine, it should be a good 3 hours, 2 hours away from your coffee, because that taste in the mouth will antidote it.
Shobi, you told me that if you have taken the COVID vaccination.
Oh, there's the big conversation.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
Okay, so this is a big one, because for homeopaths, we work directly with the immune system. And for our remedies to work, just like in Ayurveda or yoga or whatever, the immune system is everything. So when you take a strong chemical injected into the bloodstream with whatever the preservatives, whatever the dead virus, live virus, all of that, you impact the immune system in a way that you don't know. You don't have control over it. And that vaccine or medicine overrides the immune system. So our medicine will get antidoted. That's the challenge there. And to be honest, I think at this stage, we're still talking about experimental. We're not sure what the results are, And there's a lot, and it's not a one fit for all, like everything. Some people may not be affected by these vaccines at all, but some people might be terribly affected. So the way in which it's being done is also critical. People with allergies, with mild allergies, can have severe reactions. Their immune systems can get pushed into going into autoimmune conditions. So I think there should be a lot more care. And again, it's an individualized process. I don't think this one size fits all method works, which vaccines tend to do.
Have you taken the vaccine, Shobi? Have you
No,
taken
No, I have not taken it, and I have no intention of taking it.
Oh.
Okay, thank you. Guys, do you have any other questions for Shobi? I mean, we have a few minutes while you can ask a few more things, and then we go into the meditation that Shobi did. So, did a voice. So,
you, before I go off and we go into the meditation, I just want everyone to also keep in mind that we're a frequency. You and me and all of us have a frequency, an energetic vibration. And disease is a very low vibration. So it's very important that you keep your vibration high. You lift it up to those high ideals, your spiritual practices, so that disease is beneath you. And that should be our goal. Like, don't be afraid. Don't go into preventative medicine with fear. Instead, go into your preventative medicine protocols more as empowerment. I want my Kotamali because I know that it supports my immune system. It's not going to shut it down. And I personally wouldn't want to take anything that's going to shut my immune system down, because then I become helpless. And I don't like to be helpless. I really value having this power to be able to heal myself. And
Shobana, I have one question. In the kitchen for everyday people in Sri Lanka, what would be some herbs and spices that we should go to for minor ailments?
Minor ailments, I think turmeric has got some really good press in the last 2 years. I think turmeric has been this wonder little spice for us. For me, I have to say a little bit of the turmeric in even a little bit of orange juice, or even with like steeped in hot water. It really helps because it's also a blood thinner. So for those of you who are taking blood thinners, I wouldn't recommend it every day, but a couple times a week, it's a really good anti-inflammatory. It's a purifier. Turmeric is great. Ginger, I think, is fabulous for all those digestive issues, and that's a must-have. But the fresh ginger, you know, in a
Does it
herbal
have to be
tea-
organic?
Well, here's my thing. I would rather use the ginger, whatever the ginger is, than not use it because I couldn't find organic, because I really believe that there is a filtration process. And
Oh,
this is where sometimes your prayer practices come in, you know, in every faith, you bless the food. Even if you don't have to do it outwardly, internally, you bless the food and you can harmonize the energies of whatever the toxicity is. So yes, organic would be great, but not, you know, for us here, for example, in Sri Lanka, we don't know if it is organic or not. In the US, you have organic certifications, but if you can grow your own, even better, because you know exactly what's in it. And the
And
ability,
Shobhi, what about ajwain? And you already mentioned honey.
yes,
And about ajwain?
sorry, you keep cutting out.
she said ajwain. I don't know what that is.
Ajwain.
Ajwain.
Ajwain,
As in the kitchen, you know, the kitchen pharmacy, the ajwain, aswamodakam.
Asumodakam. Yes, in the
Yeah,
Ayurveda,
it actually is a good.
Called
Yes.
Asafatiga, right?
Yeah, it's actually good for your indigestion, for flatulence,
Yes, in
whatever, you know, for
Ayurveda,
gas,
yeah.
whatever.
Yes, it is very good. I have in my favorites list. It's not one I think of often because the ginger seems to work for me, but it is
Right.
it is an important one. Yeah, it is
And
an
of
important
course,
one. And you
coriander.
mentioned about honey.
I'm sorry
Honey.
to butt in, but you guys, we have coming to the end of the show.
Hey,
Shobhi, do you have a few
Carol, there's
words
this
of-
one question, the activist
Okay.
question, you know, we
Okay.
get so flustered, we get our blood boils, we hear so much, we take so much action, then we take 10 steps back. Is there some kind of steps that homeopathy recommends that we watch, or what do we do as activists? How do we stay centered when you are in the center of all these controversies and seeing that people are not exploring powerful humanistic solutions? It frustrates you. How do
I
we
know
stay
that.
centered, Shobhi?
I know, Soraya, that's a big one, because I think how do you keep that fire of activism burning but not have it burn you out, right? It's that fine balance.
Exactly. Uh-huh.
And I think one of them would be that personal practice, you know, your personal sadhana, whatever that may be. For me, it might be yoga. For you, it might be a run. And then it might be your prayer practice. But to give you that perspective, to be able to do everything within your control, and then to also step back and let go. So there is that constant give and take with whatever the situation, because I think as activists, and we must protect our activists at this time, because their work is so very important, but they can't burn out.
Thank you,
And-
Shobhi. On that,
and
I
for all
really
the
have to
activists out
move
there,
on.
I think that
I just want to
meditation
say,
thing-
you know, this is what is amazing about women. When Shobhi spoke about all of this, she spoke about how you empower yourself. And you know, this show is about empowerment, all about empowerment. And I firmly believe we women, we look at a multitude of things to try to help ourselves or our children or our families. It's not one or the other, right? And I think this is why more women should get into politics and running government, because I think we are more capable of either not going to war or fleeing, but looking at other ways of sorting matters out. So that's for another day. Let's do some meditation, a few minutes of meditation before we wind up. Shobhi, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I invite you now to join us in the deep relaxation segment in Shavasana. Lie down on your back. If you have any cushions, you can place a round bolster cushion under your knees so your knees are bent and gentle. You can place 2 cushions under each arm so your arms are comfortable and your heart is open. If not, you're lying down on your mat, lying on your back. Stretch and relax. Just observe your inhale, observe your exhale. Whenever you're ready on the next inhale, scrunch up your toes, tighten your foot, tighten your ankle, tighten your knees, your thighs, your buttock. Exhale as you pull your belly button towards your spine, tightening all the organs in the abdominal cavity. Inhale, roll your shoulders back, open your heart center. Make a fist out of your hands, tighten your arms, tighten your shoulders, tighten your throat. Scrunch up your face, bring all your features towards your nose. Tight, tight, tight from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Exhale and relax. One more time. As you inhale, scrunch up your toes, tighten your feet, tighten your ankles, tighten your calves, tighten your knees, tighten your thighs, tighten your buttocks. Exhale, pull your belly button towards your spine. Tighten all the organs in the abdominal cavity. Inhale, roll your shoulders back, open your heart, make a fist out of both your hands. Tighten your arms, tighten your shoulders, tighten your throat. Scrunch up your face. Scrunch it up like you've eaten something sour. Tighten from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Tight, tight, tight. On an inhale, raise just your arms and legs just a little bit off the mat. Tighten a little bit more. Exhale and relax. As you exhale, let go of whatever tension, disease, or discomfort. Let it go. On your next inhale, take in the vitality and energy, and exhale whatever doesn't serve you anymore. As you inhale, bring in a memory of a vibrant time at your most joyous, your happiest, at a time you felt content and free and strong. Remind yourself of that exuberance, that vitality. Exhale and let go of all that does not serve you anymore. Just lay there, bring your awareness to your body. Bring your awareness to your thoughts. Observe your thoughts, just witness. Bring your awareness to your breath, to each inhale and each exhale. Allow yourself to rest in this expansive place. Just relax there and let it all go. gently wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, slowly roll over to one side.
I hope that
Fabulous.
was relaxing.
And that was Carol, so that the listeners know. That was Shobana's video on audio on
Yeah.
yoga. Yes.
So I just like to say to everybody, thank you very much for joining us. The next show is on the 13th of next month, of July. So join us then for another Wisdom Wednesdays wellness program. Thank you, Shobana. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Stay well. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.